All right, man, welcome back to the God-Centered Men's Recovery Show. I'm your host, Tim Holloway, and I'm glad to be back at you again. Hey, look, if you're new here, this is a show for Christian men inside of recovery who want to live an awesome spirit-filled life. So if you stumbled on this show, welcome. This is a good place for you to be. So we're going to continue on our topic, and we are talking about the world and the world systems. This is the third video, so if you want to understand what we are talking about or where we came from, you can go back to the couple of videos before this. So we're going to just briefly, for a minute or two, give a foundation of where we're at right now. So first, we gave a thorough definition of what the world is, and that's the kingdoms of this world. This is the world order and the world system and all its structures. All of these things were created by man. Now, under that umbrella falls science, law, education, politics, entertainment, news, government, and religion. Now, all of these fall under the systems of the world. Now, number two, what we talked about is that the whole world is under an evil influence and is subject to disintegration. And what that means is that the world systems and everything that's involved with the world is subject to deterioration and is actually getting worse and not better. Okay, everything's going through a process of deterioration and falling apart. And it's important for us to really understand how fragile the world is and the world systems and all its structures are, and that it is leading towards disintegration. Super important. Number three, there is a God of this world. He has an agenda, okay? And he blinds the minds. And his main mode is deception. Super important to understand that. If you want to be able to combat your enemy, you must understand the weapons that he uses. And bottom line, lies and deception. That's it. Like there's no other tricks in the basket, okay? Lies and deception is what is coming against you now. Lies inside your mind and your belief system, your paradigm, and all of these different things. And deception about what is truth and what is not truth, okay? Number four, the Antichrist is in the world and its systems. Now, the Bible says the Antichrist is already in the world. Now, John said that like 2,000 years ago, and that he already knew that there was a world structure and a systems that is already opposed to what God wants. So everything that is inside the world is moving away from God and continue makes choices that moves them farther away. It's important to understand that because most of our world systems operate on a very codependent fashion. Now, the elite, of course, they have a goal, they have an agenda, and the agenda is to cripple you and get you dependent upon them and for them to be your God and you be subject to them. And for that to take place, they must become your provider. They must become the one who provides you protection and looks out for you and takes care of you. And so when the role of government takes on that fashion more and more and more and more, you know that it is for you to become codependent upon them and the systems. And every single thing that man does leads to some sort of crippling and an enabling. And it leads to some sort of you dependent upon me and I'm the savior and you're the victim. Okay? It's important to understand that. So we think when we're doing these laws and we're doing certain things that we are being helpful and it's beneficial, but it all leads to some form of codependency. And that is the problem. That is to look away from God as the source and the provider and to look to someone else as your source and your provider. Number five, the enemy's tools are lies and deception. I jumped ahead on that. Number six, the world and its systems cannot receive the spirit of truth. And that is they are closed to the message. They are closed and unable to receive the spirit of truth operating inside of their lives. Number seven, which is the one of the most powerful ones that I want to get through, is that the world can't give you real peace. Now, we somehow, in this quest to find fulfillment, we go on this quest and we look outside of us to begin to meet our needs. And that is if there's something outside of me, then I can be fulfilled if I achieve and I grasp that and I hold it as my own. And that is we look at the money. We look at property, we look at possessions and all these different things, and we say, if I get that, then I finally will feel fulfilled on the inside. And what this is the emptiness of man. And that is the emptiness and the void and everything that is going on inside of our hearts, inside of our lives. We seek to feel it. And what we fill it with is the temporary things of the world, lust and all of these different things, right? And so when I talk about these, the world not able to give you real peace, what I'm saying here is that there is a peace and fulfillment inside of God, inside of your relationship with Him, that fills you with fire and passion and enthusiasm. That doesn't mean everything's going well in your world. That doesn't mean that you are prospering in every single area of your life. But what that does mean is that you have the joy and the peace of God, that even though you might be experiencing a storm, even though you might be experiencing a difficult moment, you have joy and peace on the inside because you have inner contentment and inner fulfillment that is not subject to what is happening. The reality is this: happiness depends on what is happening. And joy is something that's far different. You see, I can experience things in this world that are painful, and they're not going to make me very happy, right? If you have experienced poverty in any way, you know what I'm talking about. It's not going to make you happy. If you lose a loved one or suffer loss, you can guarantee that you're not going to be happy about the situation. And so happiness is situational. And that is that if it's fair weather, I'm happy. If it's not fair weather and the storm is coming, I'm not happy. And so it's understanding to tap into something that is deeper than circumstance. And that is a joy on the inside that no matter what is going on around me, I'm going to choose joy, and I'm going to find my contentment in a source that is not shakable. Now, what we have experienced lately inside of this world is a shaking, right? A shaking that is taking place inside of the world. And that we think that we could trust in all of these different systems, but the reality is that they're under deterioration and they are going to fall apart, okay? So knowing this, to place our trust and our fulfillment in a solid source. And that is a source that is unmovable. It's a source that is a rock. And that is that if the government doesn't come through, I still have joy. If the world seems to fall apart, I still have joy. If the stock market crashes, I still have joy because my fulfillment is not dependent on an exterior source. And so here's our main problem. We attach our identity and our significance and everything to all these external things. And we think that we're going to find peace. We think that it's going to fill our void. And we think getting that woman, woo, yes, getting her in bed and blah, 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 blah. We think that getting that is going to bring us fulfillment. And the reality is that once you have it, you'll just become empty once again. Because whatever we gain possession of something, we get complacent and it becomes normal to us. And then we begin to grasp for something better and something more. And so what I'm saying is that there is a spiritual life that can feed or fulfill that satisfaction. And that pursuing God and finding fulfillment is the key to getting out of this hunger that is taking place inside of our life. So the peace of the world, it's not lasting, it's not real, it's not what you really want. You want something deeper and something more. So the Bible says this about the world, that if you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Now there's a lot to unpack, inside of these statements. But the first and foremost is, we're not of the world. We are in the world, but not of the world. And that means that we engage in certain worldly activities, okay? But we're not consumed by it. The world doesn't have a hold on us. And that is that allegiance in that place in our heart is given to another. And that, like I told you in the last video, that we are citizens of a different kingdom. Now we get so caught up in our identity inside of our politics. and you say, I'm this, because it seems to line up with what the political party says, right? And we so attach our identity to a political ideation. But the reality is that if you are a child of God, there is something that supersedes your political ideation. And there is something that supersedes your occupation. And there is someone and something that supersedes everything system that is called this world. Okay? So we are in the world and not of the world. And the reality is that the world will love its own. And that is the men that rise to the top, the men who become elite and part of the club and all that, is the men that have the same mindset, the same belief systems, the same drives as the world system does. Okay, the world loves its own. And what that means is this. Its own is a friendship. That means the world is friends with you. That means the world accepts you. The world approves of you. You belong to the world, and you're the same as the world, and the world is your home. Okay? That's what it's saying here, that the world embraces its own. Okay? But the world rejects those who are different. And the reality is that the gospel is very divisive. And that it draws a line in the sand. And it draws a line and says that you are different and you are unique. Okay? You are in this world and all of its systems, and you're taking part of this life and stuff like that. But the reality is that you are not of the world. Your life and who you are has a different source. You are from something else. Now, I want to thoroughly define this word "of" so we can grasp the reality of this. Okay, of is a preposition of talking about an origin, where something is from, where the action proceeds from, and for. So what that means is that there are those who are for the world, its structures, and its systems, and they everything about them, all their actions proceed from that belief. Then there are those who are not of this world, who are not from and not for this world, and whose actions spring from that belief. There are two kinds of people in this world. Okay? We like to think that there's different. There isn't. The only thing that differentiates the two is those who are from the world and those who are not of this world. Okay? Two kinds of people. And that is, there are those who are on the wide path that leads to destruction, and there are those who are on the narrow path who leads to life. Okay? And so understanding this is that this might sound mean, but this is the biblical paradigm that the Bible gives us. The Bible is very divisive, which you'll get what I'm talking about as I proceed forward here. But there is a difference. There are those who are from the world, and there are those who are not of this world. Powerful. James says this. This is another reason why I'm talking about how the Bible seems to be very mean and seems to be very divisive. And you'll get what I'm talking about when I tell you this statement. Don't be a friend to the world. So this is an admonition of calling those out. What are we saved from, actually? As you read the Bible, you see that we are saved from the world. Okay? So James 4:4 says this, "You adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore will be a friend of the world is an enemy of God." Oh my gosh. Like, this is mean. This is so divisive that I don't even think I can communicate how divisive this is. What it is saying is there are people who are on one side and there are people who are on the other. Okay? And that is that he begins to call them adulterers and adulteresses. That's some powerful stuff, right? Let me go into what this means. It's very, I think you'll find it very edifying to know what this means. So, adulterer and adulteress. It comes in the Greek word and it means to be an illicit lover. Okay? And what that means is to be on the secret. Okay? That means to be on the down low. And those of you know who this kind of lingo, I'll explain. Down low. A secret. Now think about this for a moment, that you had a relationship and they wanted to keep it secret. And you're going to be like the friend with benefits, and everything that about this relationship is going to be on the down low. Now, there'll be multiple reasons why a person would do that to you. One, they're doing something wrong and they don't want somebody else to find out. Or one, they're with somebody else and they don't want to make them jealous, right? And so we understand that to be a secret lover, to be a lover on the down low. And that's what it's saying here, that James said, man, you guys are lover on the down low. That you are a secret lover, and that you claim to be passionately in love with God, yet you're keeping it a secret. You're keeping it on the down low. And the next definition is this. It's the act of refusing or continue to follow, obey, or recognize. I want you to think about this, is that if you had a relationship with somebody and they failed to recognize you in public, right? And they announced you as not their fiance, they announced you as your friend, okay? And they didn't want to recognize you, or they were ashamed of you, then you get what this is talking about here. And the last one is this: to abandon your previous loyalty and to defect. Now, this is what Peter did when he denied Christ. Okay, we know and understand that he was defecting and that he was abandoning his previous loyalty. He didn't want to. Obviously, he knew the fate of what he was going to go through, right? He knew everything that was going to happen to him. And he thought that being a part of him would lead to his own death at that moment. And so he defected. And that is, he bowed out, he renounced, he didn't identify himself as a follower of the way. And that's what James is saying here when he says, you adulterer. You're a secret lover. You're a lover on the down low, and you're refusing to recognize him, and that you're abandoning your previous loyalty. And he says you do that when you say, I'm a friend of this world. And that is clearly the division and the dividing factor. There are those who, God is after our hearts. I'd like to say that. God is after our hearts for our allegiance, our love, and our affection, right? And that's why the first and the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, right? And then it goes to the neighbor as yourself. And so he is after our hearts, our love, and allegiance. And that is that when there are things that change that allegiance, he is going to come and he's going to bring correction. And this is what James is saying here, is that the love of God is paramount, and it's first, and it's foremost. And the most dangerous thing that we could do is begin to love money, love the world and its systems, love pleasure, love addiction, and all these different things. What we begin to cherish those things, and those things become our focus. And those things ultimately lead to the deterioration and to death. So moving on. Friendship. This is a fondness, a tender affection. He said, whoever will be a friend of the world is at enmity with God. And so he goes on to say that a friend of the world is the enemy of God. So this is enemy, comes from the word hostility. And it means to be in opposition to. So when we find ourselves in our allegiance and our affection swaying to another direction, this is what James is saying, that your allegiance is shifting and you have now become in hostility, in opposition to the things of God in your life. So how is this practical? Let me tell you first. Whenever we lose focus, whenever we begin to love something more, and that is that it captures our perception, it captures our attention, and most of all, it captures our time. And we begin to shift focus on that instead of being in alignment where we know that we should be, and we shift our perception and our focus to something else. And what happens? It begins to consume us. Now, I don't mean in this literal sense that we're set on fire and we're consumed, but consumes us. Our energy, our time, our attention gets consumed in something else. And so what begins to happen there is that focus begins to shift and you begin to deteriorate. So this is practical in every single area of our life, whether it's family, faith, fitness, and finances, and asking ourselves this, is that am I maintaining focus so I can begin to produce the results? Am I staying in alignment so I can produce the best results possible? That is super important. So moving on. I touched on this a little bit, how Jesus' temptation in the wilderness, it was the Spirit that led Jesus to the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And in this process, the enemy comes to him and he takes him on a really high mountain. And what he does is he shows him all the kingdoms of the world and all the glory of them. And he says to Jesus, I will give you all this if you fall down and you worship me. Now I want you to explain what's going on here. Is that the enemy is in ownership. He owns it, okay? He owns the world and its systems. That's his. And understanding this, that he was making an offer to Jesus, that if he would bow down and worship him, that he would give him all this. And he had every right and every power to do so. Now we look at this, and I don't want to over spiritualize this too much, but the same thing is being offered today. There's been so many things that have come out in the last 5 years about the world systems and how they operate. And if you bow down, and that is if you conform, that's the key thing here, is that if you conform to the world and its agenda, you will be rewarded highly and very significantly. Okay? And we'd be blind to not think that that is how this world system and how they operate. Okay, there is an elite club that we're not a part of. Okay, and you become elite by conforming. Okay, and if you don't conform, you are not of. You're not in it. You're not of it. You're not in the in group. Okay, so all nonconformists get booted out. And the only thing that matters inside of the circle is conformity. And the reward is there for you if you conform to what the system wants. Now, there's so many systems that operate in the same way. Most every system and structure of man is rewarded based upon conformity, obviously, right? And that if you go with the flow and you follow the rules and you go with the standards and stuff, then you will be rewarded greatly for doing so. And so we get that. So he offers Jesus this temptation, and he had every right to do so. And what he wants is what? Worship. And that means to, in this basic definition, is to kiss. But it means to stoop down. It means to bow down. And the analogy that this word gives is it's like a dog licking its master's hand. And that is that it comes to you and it crouches in submission. And that it's to prostrate yourself or to fall upon the floor. Okay? So in all this terminology, what we get is basically the word bow. If you bow down, if you prostrate yourself, if you submit, if you fall in line, and you conform, I will give you all this. Okay? And so it's important to know that that's what the world system offers. And that's what the temptation is going to be. in multiple different areas of your life. If you conform to the world system and its ways, then things are going to go well for you and you'll be on a smooth road, okay? But if you decide to buck against the system, you decide to rebel, things are not going to go so well for you. Now, it's important to understand that's the basic message that the world is going to be giving in multiple different ways. So, moving on. John says this, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. So he says these two things, don't love the world and don't love the things that are in the world. And if any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Once again, we are talking about very mean statements, very divisive, and a very clear-cut line drawn in the sand. And this is what Christianity was meant to produce. There is a line in the sand. There are those people who are of the world, and there's those people who are not of this world. There are those people who love this world and all the things that are in this world, and there are those who don't. Love not the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And he goes on, all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And these things are not of the Father, they're of the world. So this word love here is to have a strong affection for, an attraction for, admiration, fond of, attachment, devotion, cherish, take pleasure in. So these are all the definitions of what it means to love the world. So what does this say? That I have a strong affection for the lust of the flesh. And that is this godless, sinful nature that we all come into this world. It is very insecure. It's very fearful. And what it's saying is that the world and its systems and everything involved with that is for the lust of the flesh and desire to make your flesh happy, your sinful nature happy. Okay? That is the lust of the flesh. Now, the others is the lust of the eyes. Now, this is talking about definitely sexualness and attraction and things that are pleasant to your vision and all of these different things. So what is taking place in this world and the world's systems is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Now, this pride of life one is really important one. And that is, the accumulation of wealth and things and status and positions and power and all of these things that the world offers, they are merely all of them for the feeding of the ego. So the world system and ways are to feed your ego, to get you inflated with self-conceit, to get you inflated with your overestimating your own worth, right? And to get you into the pride of life, to keeping up with the Joneses, right? You see somebody else has something and then I gotta have it too. You know what I'm talking about. And all of this, everything that it's talking about, John says, this here, that's not from the Father. That's from the world and its systems. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. So it's having a admiring. Now we know where our heart is based upon what we admire. If we admire the wealthy who are taking advantage of people and using people as commodities and all of that stuff, if we admire those people, then it tells where the condition of our heart is, right? And so understanding this, the love of the world, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, all those things, they don't come from the Father, they come from the world and its systems. So the next episode, we're going to talk about how to overcome some of those things. But I just want to give you a clear-cut reality of what the Bible says. And that is that we are not to love the world. And if we do, the love of the Father is not in us. And so this would definitely, when I think about this topic, and I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks now, and it's very challenging to me. This is not something that I find very easy. Because what it does is it challenges each area of my life and says, am I bringing God into each area? Or am I allowing business to consume me? Am I allowing relationships to consume me? Am I allowing all of these different things to consume my time and my energy? Or am I allowing Him to consume me? And that is that I'm caught up in my spiritual life and connection with God and what He wants to do in me and through me, and I'm allowing Him to empower me to do those things. Oh, that's a powerful reality, brothers. All right. Peace.